Alright, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Meta Unreal Engine. Now, usually in all the other episodes and videos that I make, I'm always on the bottom left, right? I'm with you from a video interface. Well, unfortunately, we'll need the entire screen for Unreal Engine because there's just so much going on with the interface that I unfortunately have to be absent from the bottom left. But don't worry, because I'm with you both in spirit as well as in audio. So don't worry about it, I'm right here. So how do you get started with Unreal? The first thing you should do is go to unrealengine.com and just press get started now. Now there are two licenses, right, which is the publishing license and the creator's license. I think you guys for now should use the creator's license because you are a student and you are learning, so it's better to just go with the creator's license. Press select, and then it'll ask you to log in and download and stuff. I'm not going to go through all of that. You basically log in, you download, and you get started. Now, a lot of people have asked me what version of Unreal to use, right? And the version I use is I think it's 4.23. Now, the version doesn't matter so much. The reason I use 4.23 is because I've been using it for a while, and the upgrade between 4.23 and 4.24 is not really a big one. You can use whichever version of Unreal you want. So I'm going to be using 4.23. If you want to use 4.24, it's fine. It doesn't make that much of a difference. But 4.23, here I go. Let's get started. So there are plenty of things we can build with the Unreal Engine. And for this tutorial, for this entire series, we are going to build a third-person game. So just like GTA, the camera is going to be placed behind the character, and we're going to run around and do all sorts of interesting stuff. Now, I thought of many ideas for what the game should be, but I think the best idea would be to have kind of you being a simple Indian who's going through India, and we'll try to mock up and make something which is very India-like in a neighborhood. And you have superpowers. You have Indian superpowers. So somewhat like an Indian Shaktiman is what we are going to be creating. Actually, Shaktiman is Indian, so I meant Indian Superman. But that's what we're going to be creating. It's going to be a very exciting project, and I can't wait to see what we create. So let's click on New Project. And there are plenty of projects available here. We are not going to go through everything. What we're going to do is we are going to select the third person. Where's the third person? Third person base template. And the reason we're going to use the third person base template is because it has a few things we need. It has that base character already created, so then I can show you what the base character is like instead of building him from scratch. At the same time, there are many other different types of 2D side scroller, rolling, first person. So these are all just base templates. You can create it from scratch. It just saves you some time. So I'm going to click on third person. I'm going to set maximum quality for sure, and with starter content. The starter content is essentially simple things like fire particles and walls and some trees, just for us to get started, so that we don't struggle finding the assets in the first place. So let's change the folder. Let's put this on my, let's just say, well, all Unreal stuff. Let's put it here, and let's call this tutorial. Let's call it meta tutorial. Keep the branding intact. So click on create project and let it load. It's going to take you some time for it to load the first time. And today we're just going to go through the interface. We're going to see everything that's up with the engine, what the different parts are. We're not going to try to get too comfortable with the engine. We're just trying to show you what it's like. The goal with Unreal, like I told you in the last video, is not to learn everything about the engine. You cannot. The goal with my tutorials, with this Meta Unreal Engine thing, is for you to be able to get comfortable enough with this environment, with the engine, and with the different parts of the engine, so that you can figure out whatever you need to figure out if a challenge is presented in front of you, right? It's not to know everything, but to be able to figure out a challenge because you have comfort with the engine, right? So that's what we're going to be doing, and this is the Unreal interface. right? It looks like a very complex interface, but it's not. Right? One of the first things we're going to do, just while we explore this interface, is to look at the different parts. So we've got the menu here, the top little menu here, and we've got this window panel, right, which I think I want to show you first. So there are a lot of things you can do in the window panel. There's details, there's editor modes, there's viewports, but half of those are already open. So you can see what's open by seeing if there's a tick mark around it. So there's a tick mark around toolbar, and as you can see, the toolbar is already there. So we don't have to worry about anything in the Windows panel. The edit is more about undo, duplicates, that sort of stuff. But three things that are very, very important in the edit menu are the editor preferences, the project settings, and the plugins. We're not going to touch any of these right now. We're actually going to go, more into the hands-on stuff. But I wanted to let you know that these things are available here, right? So the file menu, again, you can open stuff, you can open assets, you can save stuff, and you can export your project to an actual game. So I'm just going to, jump into the editor. This is the toolbar. So I'm just going to press play, right? So as you can see, now I'm in the viewport playing as this character. I'm going to press the WASD buttons, and I'm going to press the space button to jump. As you can see, the player climbs, he jumps off, and I can jump again. So you can actually play your level in real time. That's the cool thing about Unreal, where you don't actually need to compile anything. If I press the escape key, it immediately stops the level, and I can, I'm back in the viewport in the editor. Now, as you can see in this toolbar, you can save. So I'm just going to save. Source control is something that you don't need to use right now. It's basically when you're working with your friends online, so that you guys, if you guys have used GitHub, it's very similar to that. But for those of you who are not familiar with GitHub, it's basically a way where you can work with your friends, and when you're editing a file, it doesn't affect another person editing a file. So it's like you both can work on the same project at the same time. There's a lot of other stuff, right? There's content. We don't need to see the content browser. That's here. That's already open. There's the marketplace, which we're not going to open. That's where you buy the assets. If you want a new tree or you want a new character, you can actually just buy it, right, from the Unreal store. So it makes your work a lot easier. Then, of course, there's settings, which is a plugin, the volume, stuff like that. We're not going to go into that. There's blueprints, which we will be using a lot of. Blueprints is basically Unreal's way of doing code. Now, you can also write code in C++, but that's not really, it's not how the engine is built. The engine wants you to build your games in blueprints, and blueprints are like visual code. They are absolutely beautiful, and when we get into this series, in fact, I'm going to be teaching you how to code, right? I mean, people think that blueprints are not code, but they are. Whereas with, when I taught you guys HTML and CSS, that's not true code. HTML, CSS is more like simple instructions, but blueprints are actual true code. So for most of you, and many of you actually, this is going to be your first coding experience. In fact, because it's visual, I feel you will take to code much better than if it was non-visual. Right? So we'll get into blueprints soon. Then there's cinematics, which is, I like to call it the sequencer, which allows you to make, those cool VFX movies. So we're going to get in that too, somewhere at the end of this season, where we learn how to kind of make movies where we have the character, maybe blasting another character and some animations. It's going to be beautiful. Build is where, a lot of things in Unreal. Let me show you what a build is, right? So I'm going to click on this box right here. I'm just going to move it a little bit. As you can see, the shadow is still in its old place. And that's the reason, and that's because Unreal hasn't built this level yet. So when I click on build, what ends up happening is the textures and the lighting are rebuilt so that the shadow chases where it's, or goes to where it's supposed to be, right? So now the shadow has gone back below the box. So things like this, you learn as we go ahead. But building is essentially you build three things, right? The first thing you build is you build all the textures. So there's some materials applied to all of these. Right now it's gray, so you can't see the materials, but there are some materials applied to all of these. And so the building builds those materials. So as you can see, it builds textures. Then you build geometry. Then you build lighting, and then you build reflections. Now, I'll come to what all of these mean in a bit. I'm just showing you through the engine, but building is an important part of what we do. Playing, you guys have already learned, and launching is actually launching on a full screen where you can actually play your game, and it's almost like cooking your game for Windows or Mac or something like that. We won't be using the launch too often. Now, coming to the rest of the kind of engine, one thing that I need to teach you, and this is where I think you should, open the engine and follow along. If you're not following along, you're wasting your time. Right? So I'm going to click on build. right? So follow along with what we do, especially when we're talking about the Unreal Engine, which definitely requires you to be alert and cognitive and actually using your hands at the same time. So how do you move around the viewport? So as you can see, you see this crosshair here. If I press the right click button and hold, if I press and hold the right click button, I can look around, right? It's like a nice little look around. Now, for people who've played games like Counter-Strike, you might probably understand and remember the WASD keys, which are important in the Unreal Engine. Now, if I press the WASD keys, they're not actually going to work, but if I'm holding the right click button, I can actually use the WASD keys to kind of move my viewport around, move around in my viewport. So I can see all of these interesting things if I hold the right click key and move around. Now, I can do the same with the left click key. I can just press and hold around, but I'll prefer using the right click key because it gives me a little bit more freedom with my left click to click on something. All right, so that's about it. That's how you move around in the viewport, and you guys probably have a fair idea of it. Now, one thing that you need to know is that there's the world outliner here. This basically has all of the components in this particular scene. So this is a scene, right? It's called a level in Unreal. So this level has a lot of things going on. It's got some geometry, it's got some walls, and also you can scroll in and scroll out using your mouse's scroll wheel. I don't actually recommend people using a touchpad to do Unreal. I actually want you guys to get a mouse. It's very, very important. Otherwise, you will get a lot of things wrong. But you can scroll in and scroll out using the middle mouse button. Right, so there's some walls, there's some meshes, and we'll come to what all of these mean soon. So this is basically just a collection of everything that's in the scene. Now these are the details. This is the details panel, right, that you see here. So when I click on something, say I click on the wall, I can see a lot of details about the wall. What is the location of the wall? What is the rotation? What is the scale? So I'll give you an example. If I make this 100, you see the wall got longer. Let's get it back to 30. You can't probably see it, so let's change the I guess the Y. Let's make this 5, right? It's going backwards. You can't see it again. Let's make this 30. So as you can see, the Z, it's gone upwards, right? So you can change it directly from here, and using Control Z, I just undid that. Now what's the mesh it's using? You can swap out the mesh at any time in Unreal for any object. So that's a cool thing, right? And then there's a material attached to the mesh. So in Unreal, you have to understand that there are meshes, and then there are materials attached to that mesh. So you could have a green color grass material attached to this wall mesh. So you can have any sort of crazy combinations that you want. Then there's a lot of things about physics, there's a lot of things about collision. We'll get into all of this in time, so you don't have to worry about any of that. The last important piece, actually the second last important piece, is the content. So you got a lot of different things in the content folder, and because we have the starter content, we can see that it's given us a lot of interesting things to use. So if I click on architecture, there's some floors, there's some pillars. I can just drag this in whenever I want, right? And as you can see, I'm just going to press the WASD buttons to move around. There's a nice little pillar here. There's a wall here. I mean, you can do some interesting, funky shit in Unreal, right? So you can do some really, really interesting stuff in Unreal. Let's go back to the starter content and let's look at some props, right? Let's pull out a couch and put it here. And as you can see, one of the things Unreal does is it automatically places the couch on the floor, on the nearest. If you take any object in Unreal and put it into the scene, it will always go really close to the floor so that it looks like it's right on the floor, right? So it looks like it's placed. So that's a cool thing about Unreal, and we don't really have to worry about any of that. So now if I press the play button, you can see that the couch is here, but I can walk through the couch, right? I can't walk through this pillar, but I can definitely walk through the couch. So we need to figure out all of this in the next episode, and we will figure out why we're able to walk through this, but are getting stuck at the walls, at the architecture. The last thing that I want to show you, and I'm just going to press escape to exit the game view, my character's back where he started, is to show you the modes, right? So there are many different modes in Unreal. This is the mode called place. So I can place stuff. I can put a cube, and the cube is a mesh, but you can place many other things. You can place lights. Let me just show you. You can place a light here. I can put some visual effects. I can put a new character. I can put a non-player character. They're called NPCs. Non-player characters are basically enemies or whatever you want, right? And I can put some triggers, which you can't actually see, but they do interesting stuff. So all of that, right? I'm just going to press delete on the trigger and these three things. Right, so you can do all of those interesting things in Unreal. Of course, we're going to explore all of this in depth in the next episode. Then there's the paint, which is, this allows you to kind of paint meshes that have materials on them. We're not going to go into this anytime soon, so don't worry about it. The next thing is landscape, right? And in the next episode, we're going to actually generate a landscape. So I'll show you what this landscape means. You don't have to worry about it. And finally, there's foliage, which is if I want to put a lot of chairs or a lot of rocks in one area, instead of manually placing them and changing their sizes and rotation, I can do that at scale using a little bit of a generation tool that is called the Foliage tool. So that's about it for this episode, guys. I just wanted to familiarize you with the base interface. From the next episode, we're going to start making that game, and we're going to start with landscape design in the next episode. Catch you then. Bye-bye.